Welcome to the Addicted to Recovery podcast, where we will delve into the transformative journey of overcoming addiction and embracing a life of recovery. In this podcast, we share stories of hope, resilience, and triumph, exploring the challenges, victories, and lessons learned along the way. The Addicted to Recovery podcast is a platform for sharing stories of resilience, hope, and transformation in the face of addiction. Through candid conversations and heartfelt reflections, we aim to inspire, educate and empower listeners on their own journey of recovery. Join us as we explore the path from darkness to light, from addiction to freedom and from despair to hope. This is Addicted to Recovery. So, thanks very much for agreeing to take part in the Addicted to Recovery podcast. I just want to kind of start by looking at you and how addiction came to be, and was there a specific moment when you realised that drugs or alcohol were becoming a bit of a problem, and maybe when did it start?
I grew up around about alcohol and drugs, and both my parents were in addiction, and it just seemed normal. So by the time I had teenage years, it was like going out with your pals and stuff and drinking and that, and then that kind of progressed into taking drugs. I think I probably didn't have a problem till I was about 16, where it wasn't just a bit ecstasy or a wee bit of speed. I think no, like party drugs. It had started. Heroin had come into the scene, and it kind of took over where I grew up, and we were taking it now and again, you know what I mean, like putting your pocket money in together and doing it till it actually became a daily occurrence, you know what I mean, and I became addicted to it.
So when you just say like heroin, so when I think back to maybe when I was younger and I was maybe dabbling with a bit of hash or magic mushrooms or something like that, heroin wasn't really in this area. And I look at my own brother, and heroin had come into the area, and that's when he kind of started something like that. Is that what you think it was? Is that why you just went straight to kind of heroin? Heroin come in, was it that curiosity?
I think because my pals were doing it, and I thought, oh, I'm going to try that too.
So that bit of peer pressure you felt, that circle of friends that you were with, and you decided that's what we're going to do. And is that where you started it right away, or is that where they all started? Was it straight at heroin?
No, I had tried like speed and ecstasy. Drink was like my first substance that I had tried, and it was like a weekend thing, where you were chipped in and get your money for your bottle of cider and away down Balloch in it to get drunk. But I think the older we got, see going to high school, and it's all different ways for all different areas. You know what I mean? So you end up mixing with people that you wouldn't usually hang about with, and it just kind of went for there.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I found a bit like myself. It was going to high school was the thing, as you say, you're meeting young people from other areas who've maybe tried something different, maybe a bit more curious than what I was, and trying various different things. And that's maybe the same with you, as you say, going to the high school and meeting them. And when did you really kind of realise that you were in addiction? When did you kind of think to yourself, how long was it that you went, I'm addicted to this stuff, I can't really stop it?
I remember waking up one day and my whole bed was soaking with sweat, you know what I mean? And I just thought I wasn't well, you know what I mean? Then one of my pals had said to me, no, you're in withdrawals for taking heroin. But I think it's that, see when you're constantly thinking about it, how to get money to get it, stuff like that. So I don't think I knew until obviously I started to have actual physical withdrawal symptoms.
And see, during that, what was daily life like for you? What was it like? You're saying there about how am I going to get money and all that, and maybe no fully understanding about addiction. You know, you're maybe somebody saying, you know, you're in withdrawals, and maybe at that time, not really having any kind of role models and thinking, you know, I'm not really in addiction, but maybe I'm just needing merit.
Aye.
What was it like?
Well, at first you don't really notice. You think it's just something you're doing with your pals to chill out and stuff like that. I'd always had wee jobs, like I worked in the chippy and things like that. But so I was able to have money to pay for it. But it got to a point where I couldn't turn up for my work. You know what I mean? And I had left school by this point. My friends group had totally changed again. I wasn't hanging about with the people that I hung about with when I was in high school. I was kind of hanging about with the ones from my scheme that didn't have a job or just hung about in the streets. And as you were saying, it's like a wee 17-year-old lassie. You don't even know that's even addictive when you first try it. You just think you're doing something with your pals. And before you know it, you're kind of caught up in that cycle. But my life changed quite quickly after that, so it did.
And I know you say you kind of grew up round about it, like your parents and all that, used substances and all that. So did people around you, your parents and all that, kind of know what was going on? Or did you do your best to kind of keep it hush-hush?
Nobody knew for a full year I'd kind of kept it hush-hush until obviously couldn't hide it anymore.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of impact did that have on all those relationships, like family, friends? I know you've said there that the circle of friends that you had at the beginning to start, you moved away from them and then you kind of moved into the ones who weren't working and maybe hanging about. And in a previous podcast, somebody kind of mentioned themselves as maybe like a feral child. You know, is that the way you felt?
I mean, my mum and that loved us, you know what I mean? But I wanted to fit in with the feral children. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. I just ran about with all the people that normal people in society don't want anywhere to be anywhere near. Mm-hmm. But that was attractive to me at that point. I don't know if I was trying to escape home life because my mum had a lot of mental health problems. So when I was out and I was taking substances, it gave me that ease and comfort that I didn't get, which I didn't feel when I was at home in the house.
Mm-hmm. So basically getting out and getting involved in all that was a bit of kind of escapism.
Aye.
You just try to get away. And I know in my own job, within the recovery sector and addiction sector and all that, you know, we use this word trauma and all that, but I like to look at that kind of escapism type of thing. You're trying to get away from home life and you're funning a certain level of home life, if you want to call it, with other people doing the same things as you were doing with drugs. And how long did that last? How long do you think would we say, you know, that addiction kind of lasted before you really kind of understood I'm addicted? How long were we doing all this kind of stuff?
Aye. Well, as I'd said, I had kind of been doing it on the fly for a year, and then 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, my mum had to take me to the doctors for help, and I was put on a methadone prescription. It was meant to be for 6 months, not that, like, from start to wean you off it. See, when I think about that, I'm like, how young was that? But my brother, he got killed no long after that. And if I thought my drug use was bad at that point, it got a lot worse.
Mm-hmm. So to a certain degree, your brother's death just made you spiral even more into the world of addiction.
Aye, I didn't really care at that point anymore. I started injecting heroin. By this point, I was unemployable. I was running about like a one-woman crime wave, you know what I mean, in like Barlock, Alexandria, Dumbarton, anywhere that I could be able to steal out of shops and stuff like that to fund my habit.
Mm-hmm. And again, going back to the relationships with people, how did that affect all your relations? How did it affect relationship with your mum? How did it affect relationships with the friends that you had made? You know, just people in general round about you.
Aye, well, like my mum and dad, my mum she fell apart obviously when my brother died, and she was drinking quite a lot and stuff like that. My dad was the same. My friends, I didn't have any friends that I'd grew up with or anything like that. They kind of stayed away from me because of the things that I was doing and the people that I was choosing to hang about with. And the only people I dealt with were people that were doing the same thing as me, out shoplifting, selling drugs, where to get drugs. I just basically the undesirables, as people like to call them.
And what kind of thoughts were going through your head at that time? Or was there anything going through your head at that time? Was it just a case of...
I just was chasing oblivion. Just actual pure oblivion. I couldn't cope with what had happened to my brother. I couldn't cope with life, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
The world just seemed dead dark, and the only time I felt at peace is when I had a drug in my system. But in order to be able to keep having that drug in my system, I was having to go out and do things that I wasn't proud of, till it got to a point where I couldn't get into a shop, in my local area. It was brutal.
So what happened then at that point? So how did you fund that habit at that point when you couldn't get into a shop in the local area? Did you just go further afield?
I went further afield, but then thought it would be a good idea for me and my partner to start selling drugs, which then brings a whole host of problems with it itself. We were never really that good at it, right enough. We were probably our own best customers.
Mm. And was there ever a point that you felt that you wanted help? Loads
of times. I mean, I fell pregnant when I was obviously using drugs, and that wasn't enough for me. I still couldn't stop using. I was using all the way through my pregnancy, which then brought social work into my life, who tried their best to help and support me. And then I had another child in addiction, and that was just the same cycle. So it was. And then even obviously when the kids had got older and that, we weren't using heroin, but we had swapped like tablets and stuff like that, prescription meds. And at the time I would have told myself I was a great mother, but the day looking back, I realised I wasn't present, do you know what I mean, for my kids. Although they were washed and fed or whatever, it just isn't a good scenario. So I ended up, I lost my kids because of my addiction, and that kind of broke me as well. But I'd tried to stay sober, and I'd managed to stay. Well, I say sober. I was still on my prescription, but I'd stopped using illicits on top of it, and I had managed to get a year, and I'd picked up using again, and I had fell pregnant again. This time, obviously, social work straight involved because I've had 2 kids already removed from my care. Me and my partner at the time, it was just chaotic as anything. And they were giving us a chance. And one day he went to the chemist to get his prescription and ended up in prison. You know what I mean? He'd went and stole something that day and get caught and get 3 months. So because was doing all right, the social work had said to us if they would give me a chance if I was on my own, but if I was in a relationship with him, they wouldn't support me keeping the child. And it ended up that this is how cunning and baffling addiction really is. I had a big meeting to go to with the children's panel to go and basically discuss what was happening, because I was ready to have my son And the night before, I thought it would be a good idea to take a couple of Valium because my nerves were shattered, and my head was telling me my nerves were shattered and I couldn't cope. But the day I look back and I'm like that, I think it was just all fear-based, because of my experiences in the past with social work and stuff like that. No really having any support from my family and stuff. So turned up at the appointment, get through that, no bother. They said they were giving us another chance, and I went to leave, and on the way out, the social worker that I had at the time said, I'll give you a lift and I'll drop you off in Alexandria where I had lived. So I get in the car, and the next thing all I remember is the senior social worker chap in the window of the car. I'd fell asleep on the drive for Dumbarton to Alexandria. And they took me into the social work department, and the next thing they were like, listen, that's we're no going ahead with what we've just spoke about. Your son's going straight up for adoption, and it's no, we're rushing it through court kind of thing. And the sad thing is, I was that away with it. I actually couldn't comprehend the seriousness of what had just happened to me. Because I don't think I've ever been emotionally equipped to deal with life, because I've had loads of trauma in my past. So that was me. I ended up living myself in Bon Hill, and I'd managed to get myself into quite a lot of trouble, and it was to go to court, and I had went into a community drugs. They help you, know what I mean, if you're in addiction. And I'd went in there, and they had explained to me that I could get a place in their recovery house. So I went there, and see, for the first time in my life, there was folk that were actually cared about me, know what I mean, and wanted me to do well. I think I was that broken by that point. I knew something needed to change, but I just didn't quite understand how I was going to be able to do that. Needless to say, that didn't work out for us, because the first chance I got to go out on my own, I ended up used again. So I had to leave that project, but I went back. They took me back after about 6 weeks. And that place, I think, really saved my life at that moment in time, because I was just in a downward spiral. And I think I just gave up caring about myself, and I didn't really care if I died, but I just didn't know how to live, at peace. So that place kept me stable. I stayed on my prescription, just cut out the illicit drugs and stuff, but still something in me wasn't done yet, because I kept relapsing and stuff like that. I moved from Alexandria up to Clydebank, thinking it's Alexandria's a problem. You know what I mean? It's all the people you know, all that stuff. You can't get away from it. And then the first thing I unpack in Clydebank's myself. Know with all the problems, I've not changed anything about myself. To be quite honest, I didn't know how to change, because I was just that used to living that sort of lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. And for me, looking at that, for somebody who's went through a bit of education, looked at community development, a community development practitioner, I look at that, and that's a question to ask, is do you think moving was beneficial? And as you've says, the first thing you unpack was yourself a wee bit. And is that maybe, and for me in my role, to look at that, how do we help people? How do we support people? So is that try to get a wee bit more connection in a community? Is it you going away, and if moving away was a thing, do you then need to fund community initiatives, things to get involved in that can help and support you, so that you're not moving away and continuing with the same behaviours that you had in the area that you were saying was a problem? Do you think something like that would have helped you?
Well, it did help me in the end up, because when I went to Clydebank, I didn't really know anybody. And I knew I wanted to change, so I started going to recovery cafes, and I went to them at the beginning, still using on a prescription and stuff like that, then managed to stick to my prescription and started volunteering, and that got me about people that were sober, people that were adding value into their community, and they got me connected with other things. I do believe that moving to Clydebank was definitely good for me, because it put people in my path that I wouldn't have mixed with if I had stayed in Alexandria.
And that's you kind of started on what we would say is maybe that road to recovery.
Yeah,
in a way,
definitely.
do you think that's what it is? So what did the early days look like for you in recovery?
At first I thought it was hard because I was letting myself get overwhelmed by the thought, I can't cope and stuff like that. But I just pushed through it. And then the more people, like I would get involved with women's groups, things that were going on in my community, I attended, and just getting to meet people. Because I think when you come from like a world of addiction and stuff like that, at the end of my addiction, I was really, really isolated. And I didn't mix with anybody, so me pushing myself out my comfort zone to mix with other people was definitely a first step in my recovery. It was massive for me, but I managed to do it. Everything that's been massive for me, instead of treating it like a barrier, I've kind of used it as a challenge to push myself on to the next thing.
And if I was to kind of ask you, is there anyone or anything that you think has played a big role in helping you turn things around? If you were to kind of narrow it down, I know you've said like a recovery house helped you because people cared about you. You've stated there about recovery cafes, recovery hubs and all that, meeting like-minded people has helped you. So there's a variety of different things there. But if I was maybe to narrow it down to one, is there anything that's played a bigger role in helping you kind of turn things around?
I definitely think the support of my local CAT team. My nurse and all that in there, she never, ever gave up on me, no matter what state I would turn up in, and she always kind of believed in me. So I would thank the CAT team. I mean, I had been a client of theirs for 20 odd years, know what I mean? But even at my darkest hour, know what I mean, I could phone and they would always be there. But I think there's been loads of different people that's been put in my path that have all helped me.
Mm-hmm. And as we would say, things keep me in recovery now. Is there any wee tools, anything like that you use to kind of keep that recovery going?
I try to surround myself with people that are supportive and build me up. I do nice things for myself. I try to help other people, even if it's just sitting with them and listening to them, because it's a reminder of where I came from and where I don't want to get back to, because I spend a lot of time with people that are in early recovery. So and dropping into recovery cafes and things like that, I just try and keep myself busy.
Mm-hmm. And that could be things like volunteering, all that kind of thing. And I know, because I know you, that you're now going and doing a degree course in community development at University of Glasgow. How did that come about?
I had done an Activate course, I think it was like 2018, 2019, when I was in the recovery house. It was like part of the programme, you had to do something educational, and I really, really loved it. And the lady that ran it, she ended up giving me a wee volunteers position in it. So I done that for about a year. But obviously I ended up going back out and being in addiction for a few years. And then when I had managed to come off my prescription, I thought, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to do community development. I'm going to do something like that. And I had messaged her and she says, why don't you put in for university? And then I had the fear because I thought, oh no, that sounds dead.
And for people who don't know, what is Activate?
It's an access course for people that want to go and learn more about their community, or people who are active in their community for like volunteering purposes or setting up their own wee groups and stuff like that. I would advise anybody to do it. It's free. And they run it I can't remember how, but it's every so often in it they do it.
Aye, I think it's free for participants to take part in
Yep.
it, but obviously the organisation that brings it in has to pay the University of Glasgow to kind of do that, and known, because it's something I went through as well. You know, and done the Activate in that condensed 12 weeks, something like that, for a community development.
Yep.
And that kind of guarantees you an interview at the university. Doesn't guarantee you a place, but guarantees you an interview. And I totally agree with what you say about, I think if people get the opportunity to go and do it, it's very, very worthwhile. And how are you finding university?
It's been a challenge because obviously I left school when I was just turning 17 and I hadn't really done any education. But I love it. I love being about the people. I love learning all about community development. I think it's really helped me in my own personal journey of recovery, because it's gave me something to focus on that's worthwhile. I do quite a lot in my community, so I feel as if I do this degree, that will be beneficial, that I'll be able to give back to my community.
Mm-hmm. And maybe help you with employment.
Oh, it definitely will help me with employment as well.
You know, so is that something at the moment, doing the degree and doing university, is that something that's keeping you going the new, helping you stay grounded?
Yeah, definitely. I never thought it would be possible for anybody like me to be able to go and do that. Even thinking about going to do a college course was massive for me. So sometimes I need to pinch myself, know what I mean, to say that, oh my God, this is really happening for you. And I know I'm really lucky. But I'm going back. I'm going to second year in September, and I really can't wait to get started.
And do you think that's something that maybe past an addiction's done to you, that it's knocked your self-esteem? Because I hear you saying there, you know, I didn't think I could do it, and not giving yourself the credit of where you're at just now. Do you think that's maybe what addiction's done to you?
Aye, addiction steals absolutely everything for you. No, your self-esteem, your self-worth, all that kind of stuff.
So what do you think people misunderstand the most about addiction?
There's a good person in there. It's just that the drugs take over. And they're driven for the need for drugs, and it's nothing will stop that. But it needs to come from the actual person that's in the addiction to want to change. Because I've spoke about examples there. Like, I couldn't do it for the love of my parents. I couldn't do it for the love of my kids. I had to be done to be able to do it for myself. And then everybody benefits for that.
Yeah, so yourself first and foremost
has
to be that person that you... And I talk about that at Rocky Roads, a family group that I help facilitate. That's what we talk about as well. You know, it's us as family members have to look after ourselves first and foremost.
Definitely.
For when the person comes to us and asks us for help. You know, we need to be ready physically and mentally to help them, you know, and I think that's the same with someone maybe in addiction. They have to want it first and foremost, and no doing it for the wrong reasons, no getting recovery for everyone else when they don't want it themselves. So if you were to look back at who you were then, what would you say to that version of yourself? If you were to look at you way back, take yourself out, what would you say to that person?
You don't need to live like this. Probably give myself a big hug and say everything's going to be all right.
Sometimes maybe that's all they need. As you've stated here already, you know, people in recovery who sees your nurse at your CAT team and all that, they never gave up on you. You know, it was people that was round about you that gave you that sense of they think I'm worth something. Is that maybe what you think? And I certainly feel when I look at my own self, look at my own brother and things like that there was maybe part of him that sometimes felt worthless, felt that nobody cared about him, but maybe didn't really know what to ask. So if I was to look at you and talk about recovery, what does recovery mean to you today? Not just about being clean, but about really living. What does recovery look like or mean to you?
It means peace. For me, it just means peace. I'm not living in my head anymore. I'm not living in fear. I can be productive. I can help other people. I know they say it's a life beyond the wildest dreams, but they're not talking about a big cuss and a fancy motor and all that stuff. It's just I am comfortable in my own skin. That's what recovery means to me today.
And I know we've talked about a few things, university, just getting clean, having family and all that. What are you most proud of today that you didn't think was possible before?
Being able to live a day without depending on a substance to help me get through that day.
And do you think you've changed as a person?
I most definitely have changed as a person. Before I could never get through a day without just being in tears. I was a nervous wreck. I have definitely changed as a person.
And I think we're maybe touching it, but if you were to give a wee message here, what kind of tools are you using in your recovery?
I do fellowship meetings. I get involved in what's going on in my community. I do meditation, and most of all, I'm actually kind to myself.
Mm-hmm.
No, whereas before I would have let the negative self-talk and all that. I also work with other people. I sponsor them in fellowship. So just I like being around about women supporting women's where it's at for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And these are the wee kind of tools you use, because I know when I've spoke with people through like AA and things like that, and in recovery, some of them it's just as easy as getting up in the morning, looking themselves in the mirror and saying, I'm not going to have a drink today.
Aye.
And then at night when they're getting ready to get back to the bed, look themselves in the mirror again and give themselves a pat in the back type of thing and say, well done. Something as simple as that. Is that things like that you use, or is it just being around like-minded people for you, going to your meetings and doing that kind of thing?
Pardon me. It's more about being around about other people for me, so that I've got loads of good people in my corner and I can talk to them and stuff and that. And don't get me wrong, we go and we do things like we had a Unity Day in Dumbarton and I went and done service at that. So it was good to see people who were still using coming in the beginning of their journey of recovery. It's stuff like that. That's where my wee fire gets lit. Seeing people getting well.
Mm-hmm. So I take it that when we're acknowledging things like coming up at the end of the month, you've got International Overdose Day, you've got the Recovery Walk and all these things. Is that maybe going back to when I asked you earlier on about what people misunderstand about recovery? Do you think the whole community should get involved in these and get an idea of what's actually going on, what people are doing, how hard people are trying, looking at these things?
I definitely do think that the community should be more involved. Back when I was growing up, there really wasn't anything like that. Usually if you hadn't seen somebody for a wee while, they had passed away, you didn't really see people getting sober and coming back into their community. So I definitely think that as times went on, recovery is getting more visible, and more people are coming on board with recovery. But I think I don't know a person in my community that addiction of some type does they touch their family. But I think if we all came together, how strong would that be? A message, a hope for people.
And how do you think recovery is becoming more visible? Do you think it's people's knowledge kind of going up about addiction? Do you think it's maybe less stigma attached to it? Do you think people are more confident to talk about it? Because if I look way back when I was younger and some of the drugs were going about, it was very much hidden. You know, I'm talking going back, nearly 40 years now. And I knew a couple of people who took heroin, but it was very much hush-hush. They had to go to Glasgow and get it because it wasn't in this area. But you never really seen it. You never heard of it. Even people, if I, had a smoke of a joint or something like that was still hidden. The new I see it in the street, it's very much commonplace.
Yep.
When you look at all that. So what do you think? How do you think now recovery is more visible? What do you think that reason is? That is it recovery walks? Is it the Acknowledging Overdose Awareness Day? Is it the initiatives that maybe things go on? Is it recovery cafes? Is it, people like yourself who are more now open to talk about it?
I think all of that's got a part to play in it. But I definitely think with the drug deaths and stuff like that, and I mean, you see it, you walk down streets and you can see people that are still using and stuff like that. But instead of trying to hide them, having places like recovery cafes, recovery walks, activities for people to come and do, whether you're still using drugs or not, it's like, come along and find out what's happening and see how you go. I never ever thought that I would get clean and sober, know what I mean? But if it wasn't for places like that, and examples of people in my community getting clean and sober that were just the same as me, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I definitely think that there is more going on now for recovery than what there's ever been. With all the National Overdose Awareness Day and stuff like that, because people are still dying. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, and I think the recovery communities are here to get, and it really does give people a chance.
But there could be more getting done, do you think?
I definitely think there could be more getting done. Whether that's possible or not, because obviously due to funding and stuff like that for things. But I definitely think more could be done because the drugs are changing. It's not like heroin and that back in the day. It's you've got fentanyl and
ketamine,
cocaine. Ketamine, crack cocaine, people injecting cocaine. Sometimes I think that the treatment that people get, like back, you could go on a prescription back in the day to stabilise you for heroin and stuff like that. But what do you give somebody that's a crack addict? And it's the type of drugs that's out now as well. The damage that it not only causes to the person and their family, but it's the whole community gets ravaged. I mean, crime goes up because they're drugs that they're savage. You know what I mean? It makes people do things that they wouldn't normally do.
So I'm going to kind of close it, but I'm going to ask you something, just you have a think and then you answer it. I'm going to ask you, and I've closed the other previous podcasts in this, if you had the whole world's attention for 5 minutes, what would you say?
Give recovery a chance, just try it.
And that's it. As simple as that.
Simple as. Mm-hmm.
So I want to thank you again for being open, being honest, and sharing your story to the Addicted to Recovery podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.